We are told that kindness is a gift, a virtue that makes the world a better place. But what if that very kindness is the thing that destroys you? What if, instead of bringing happiness, it leaves you drained, unappreciated, and exploited? The harsh reality is that in a world full of selfish intentions, too much kindness can be a curse. It turns you into an easy target for manipulation, a crutch for those who refuse to stand on their own, and a pawn in the hands of those who only take but never give. You sacrifice your own needs, your dreams, and even your dignity, all in the name of being nice. But where does that leave you? Empty, exhausted, invisible. If you don't learn to set boundaries, your kindness won't just ruin your happiness. It will strip you of your identity, your strength, and your very sense of self. 1. High expectations lead to disappointment. When you are naturally kind and giving, it's easy to believe that others will treat you with the same level of care and consideration. You assume that if you are always there for people, helping them, listening to their problems, supporting them in times of need, they will do the same for you. But the harsh truth is that this expectation is often nothing more than an illusion. People quickly grow accustomed to receiving kindness, and over time, what once felt like a generous act on your part becomes something they simply expect. They take without thinking, assuming you will always be there, always willing, always giving. But when the tables turn, when you are the one in need, you may find yourself standing alone, realizing that the reciprocity you had hoped for was never really there. The more you give, the more they take, until there is nothing left of you but exhaustion, frustration, and the painful realization that your kindness was never truly appreciated. It was merely used. And yet, the disappointment runs even deeper because it's not just about them. It's about the way your own expectations have betrayed you. You believed in fairness, in balance, in the idea that the good you put out into the world would return to you. But in reality, kindness does not guarantee kindness in return. The more you expect from others, the more you set yourself up for heartache. People will prioritize their own needs, just as you have prioritized theirs. And if you fail to set boundaries, you will continue to pour from an empty cup, hoping for a return that may never come. The only way to break free from this cycle is to understand that kindness, while valuable, must be given wisely, without the illusion that it will always be repaid. 2. People will expect constant help. When you make kindness a habit, people start to see it as a given rather than a gift. At first, your willingness to help is appreciated, maybe even praised, but over time, it becomes an expectation. The more you say yes, the more people assume you will always be available to fix their problems, shoulder their burdens, and meet their needs. What was once a kind gesture now feels like an unspoken obligation, one that no one acknowledges but everyone relies on. They stop asking if you're okay, if you're overwhelmed, or if you even have the capacity to help. They simply assume you will. And if you dare to say no or set a boundary, you may be met with guilt trips, disappointment, or even resentment, as if your refusal is a betrayal rather than an act of self-preservation. The sad reality is that people adapt quickly to comfort, and when they grow used to having you as their personal problem solver, they no longer see the effort behind your kindness. They just expect it. They may not even realize how much they are taking from you, because you've always been willing to give. Your time, energy, and emotional support become things they feel entitled to, not gifts they should appreciate. And the moment you start pulling back, when you finally reach the point of exhaustion and decide to put yourself first, you'll notice how quickly their attitudes change. Some will act as if you've wronged them, accusing you of being selfish or uncaring, when in reality, you've simply chosen to stop sacrificing yourself for others. Worse, many will only keep you around for what you provide, disappearing the moment you stop serving their needs. If you don't set limits, you risk becoming trapped in a cycle where your kindness is not only taken for granted but also demanded. You may find yourself constantly giving while receiving little in return, slowly becoming drained, unappreciated, and ultimately resentful of the very people you once tried to help. And the cruelest part? The moment you finally stand up for yourself, the people who benefited from your kindness will reveal their true colors, showing you that their loyalty was never to you, but to what you could do for them. 3. Your goals will be overlooked. When you spend your life prioritizing everyone else's needs, your own goals inevitably fade into the background. At first, it might feel empowering, being the dependable one, the person everyone turns to when they need help. You pride yourself on being the rock in everyone's life, the one who solves problems, offers guidance, and lends a hand whenever asked. But as the days and years go by, you begin to realize that while you've been so focused on lifting others up, your own dreams and aspirations have been left to collect dust. Slowly, the things that once excited you, your passions, your ambitions, the goals that gave your life direction, are pushed further and further out of sight, overshadowed by the never-ending requests of the people around you. What once seemed like selflessness now begins to feel like a sacrifice, and that sacrifice takes its toll. People around you start to see you as a resource, not as an individual with your own needs and desires. They come to expect your time, your energy, your emotional support, and your talents without question. They assume that your life revolves around theirs, that your availability is infinite, and that your goals can always wait. Because, after all, you've never prioritized them over others. The more you give, the more they take, and the less they recognize that you, too, have a future to build. Your personal milestones get overlooked because the people around you can't see past their own demands. It becomes increasingly difficult to even imagine a path for yourself when you're so caught up in helping others find their way. As you watch those around you achieve their dreams, your own goals feel like a distant memory, a fading hope rather than something tangible. And it's not just the people you help who overlook your dreams, it's you. You start to forget what you truly want, what excites you, what drives you forward. You convince yourself that putting others first is noble, that your turn will come later, and that you can always pick up the pieces of your own life when everyone else is taken care of. But in doing so, you run the risk of losing yourself entirely. The reality is that most people won't encourage you to chase your dreams. They'll keep asking for more, keeping you in a perpetual state of giving because they benefit from your selflessness. They won't push you to set boundaries or prioritize your own needs, because that would mean losing the person who constantly puts them first. By the time you realize this, you may have already sacrificed years of personal growth, relationships, and fulfillment in exchange for the comfort of others. If you don't take the reins and start putting yourself first, you'll find that no one else will. And in the end, you'll be left with the painful realization that you spent so much time helping others achieve their dreams. You forgot to build your own. For people will see you as weak. When you constantly put others' needs ahead of your own and neglect setting clear boundaries, the unintended consequence is often that people start to see you as weak. In the beginning, your acts of kindness may be praised and admired. Your generosity is perceived as a strength, a sign of your ability to empathize and care for those around you. However, over time, the dynamics shift and your selflessness begins to backfire. The more you say yes to every request, the more people come to expect your help without questioning it. You become the person people rely on, the one they know will always be there for them, no matter how much it drains you or how much they take from you. What once seemed like an admirable trait can soon turn into a predictable pattern, where people begin to take advantage of your generosity, exploiting it without a second thought. This behavior, though it may be rooted in kindness, starts to erode your strength and sense of self-worth. The problem lies in the absence of limits. Without boundaries, you fail to assert your own needs, making others feel entitled to your time, energy, and resources. Instead of respecting you for your capabilities, they begin to see you as someone whose purpose is solely to serve them, as if your life revolves around fulfilling their demands. The worst part is that, in the process, your own goals, desires, and well-being are completely overlooked, making you invisible as an individual in your own right. What's ironic is that it's the very act of failing to set boundaries and putting yourself first that causes others to perceive you as weak. By allowing others to take advantage of you without ever standing firm, you unintentionally teach them that they can walk all over you. And while your generosity is meant to show compassion, it ultimately leads others to take your willingness for granted. They stop viewing you as a strong, independent person who is capable of making choices and asserting control over their life. Instead, They see you as someone who is easily manipulated and incapable of saying no, believing that you lack the strength to prioritize yourself. Ultimately, people stop respecting you for your kindness, and instead, they view you as weak, someone whose value is solely defined by what they can extract from you. And once that perception takes root, it becomes incredibly difficult to change, as people begin to rely on you not out of admiration, but out of the belief that you are simply there to fulfill their needs, no matter the cost to yourself. 5. You'll attract opportunists. When you're constantly giving, helping, and putting others' needs above your own, you inadvertently attract opportunists who are only interested in what they can gain from you. These individuals are not genuinely invested in your well-being or in building a healthy, balanced relationship with you. They're simply looking for ways to benefit from your generosity. At first, this may not be obvious. They might appear as friends or colleagues, offering occasional pleasantries or seeming to be grateful for your help. But the reality sets in over time. They only show up when they need something. They see your kindness as a resource, not as a reflection of your character. Instead of offering reciprocal support or building a genuine connection, these opportunists start to take advantage of your generosity, draining your time and energy while offering nothing in return. What's worse, you might not even realize you're being used until you begin to notice a pattern. These people are always around when they need assistance, but they are nowhere to be found when it's your turn to ask for help, or when you simply need companionship and emotional support. They'll take and take and take, but once their needs are met, they vanish, leaving you feeling empty, unappreciated, and emotionally drained. This creates a dynamic where you're constantly giving, yet receiving little to nothing in return. Unfortunately, this type of relationship is rarely one-sided, and eventually, the realization that you're surrounded by opportunists hits hard. They may not even be aware that they're exploiting your kindness. Perhaps it's a learned behavior, or simply a reflection of how you've taught others to treat you. Nevertheless, this pattern fosters unbalanced, insincere relationships that serve only to take from you without offering the support or respect you deserve. 6. You'll attract negative energy. When you constantly give of yourself without taking time to recharge, you risk depleting your emotional resources, leading to a significant drop in your own energy levels. This depletion doesn't just affect your mood, it lowers your personal vibrations, making you more susceptible to negative energy. Essentially, when you're operating on empty, you're no longer resonating at a high frequency of positivity and vitality. Instead, you begin to attract people who mirror that drained, low-energy state. These individuals are not drawn to you because they wish to offer love or support. Rather, they are attracted to your kindness because they see it as an opportunity to exploit. They are often emotionally needy, and their own unresolved issues make them seek out those who are willing to overgive. These toxic individuals latch onto you with a sense of entitlement, expecting you to fulfill their emotional needs, all while offering little or no support in return. They might bombard you with their complaints, drama, and negativity, knowing that you're the type of person who will absorb it all without protest. Over time, this dynamic becomes more draining. What started as a desire to help others quickly turns into a toxic cycle, where you're giving and giving, but receiving nothing that restores your spirit. Instead of mutual, uplifting connections, your relationships become one-sided, where you are constantly being drained and left feeling emotionally exhausted. As you continue to overgive, this unhealthy pattern deepens, creating an environment where negativity thrives. The more you pour from an empty cup, the more you invite energy vampires into your life. People who don't have the capacity or desire to contribute positively, but instead use you as a source of fuel for their own emotional needs. This leads to a continual cycle of emotional depletion, which makes it increasingly difficult for you to focus on your own healing and growth. The more you neglect yourself in favor of others, the more trapped you become in an atmosphere filled with negativity, where your own well-being and emotional health are pushed to the background. 7. Risk of addiction. Addiction can be seen as an insidious consequence of neglecting one's own needs while overextending oneself in service to others. The core principles of Stoicism, self-discipline, moderation, and control over one's desires, are essential for maintaining emotional balance and personal virtue. Stoics believe that to live a fulfilling and tranquil life, we must first establish control over our emotions and impulses. However, when individuals continuously place the needs of others above their own, they risk pushing themselves into emotional exhaustion and neglect. This unbalanced behavior often leads to an overwhelming sense of depletion, which can trigger the temptation to seek out distractions and indulgent behaviors as a form of escape. In the short term, these behaviors, whether they involve excessive drinking, binge eating, or gambling, may provide a temporary reprieve from the emotional pain of being drained by constant demands. These forms of self-medication appear to offer relief, but they only serve to reinforce the problem in the long run. The cycle of overgiving and seeking temporary comfort turns into a vicious loop. The individual feels overwhelmed by their responsibilities, turns to indulgence as a form of coping, and ultimately becomes trapped in an addiction that exacerbates their emotional and physical depletion. In this state, the person loses touch with the Stoic virtues of rationality and self-control, gradually surrendering their ability to manage their desires in a healthy, balanced way. The Stoic philosophy warns that indulgence and addiction only serve to undermine one's personal integrity and long-term well-being. The pursuit of immediate comfort through substances or habits might offer fleeting relief, but it strips away the very tools needed to regain balance and tranquility. Instead of developing resilience and inner peace, the individual becomes reliant on external distractions, further eroding their emotional and psychological health. Stoicism urges individuals to confront their emotions head-on, practice self-awareness, and set clear boundaries to avoid falling into the trap of overgiving and indulgence. True tranquility comes not from avoiding discomfort or seeking temporary pleasure, but from facing challenges with wisdom, restraint, and a balanced perspective, recognizing that our responsibility to ourselves is just as important as our responsibility to others. Through this approach, the individual can avoid the trap of addiction, preserving their well-being and the ability to live a life that aligns with their values. 8. People will be suspicious. The suspicion that often arises when someone demonstrates extreme kindness can be understood through the lens of human nature and societal norms. In a world where self-interest is often prioritized and where generosity is increasingly seen as a rare commodity, acts of selfless kindness can spark confusion or even distrust in those who are unfamiliar with such behavior. The Stoics teach that we should not be overly concerned with how others perceive us, but instead focus on cultivating our own virtue and integrity. When individuals give freely without expecting anything in return, others may feel unsettled or suspicious, questioning why someone would behave in this way. They may wonder what personal gain is hidden behind the gestures of kindness, assuming that there must be an ulterior motive. This skepticism often arises from the ingrained belief that self-interest drives most human actions and that altruism, especially in its purest form, is too idealistic to be genuine. However, this suspicion is not a reflection of the kindness itself, but a manifestation of the fear and distrust that people often harbor. When kindness is so rare, it can appear unnatural, leading to the belief that such actions are motivated by something other than goodwill. Those who are deeply entrenched in their own struggles or hardened by past experiences may view kindness as an anomaly or a potential threat, unable to fathom that anyone could be motivated purely by a desire to help. This dynamic is at odds with Stoic philosophy, which encourages individuals to act in accordance with reason and virtue, regardless of how their actions are perceived by others. The Stoic understands that they cannot control the judgments or suspicions of others. The perceptions of others are shaped by their own experiences, insecurities, and fears, not by the true nature of the kindness being offered. In the face of such skepticism, the Stoic remains firm in their commitment to virtue, choosing to act from a place of integrity rather than seeking external validation. Stoicism teaches that a person's worth is not determined by how others view them, but by their ability to remain steadfast in their principles and live in accordance with their values. The suspicion of others, then, becomes a reflection of their own lack of understanding and an opportunity for the Stoic to further refine their own character by continuing to act with kindness, regardless of how it is perceived. In doing so, the Stoic ensures that their actions are aligned with the greater good, rather than being swayed by the opinions of those who may not fully grasp the nature of true selflessness. 9. You might enable toxic behavior. The risk of enabling toxic behavior arises when an individual consistently sacrifices their own well-being in the name of kindness, particularly when helping others who are not taking responsibility for their own actions. The core of Stoicism lies in the balance between self-discipline and helping others, ensuring that acts of kindness never compromise one's own integrity or self-care. However, when we continuously step in to solve problems for those who refuse to take ownership of their own struggles, we are not fostering positive change, but rather creating a dependency that leads to harmful cycles. The Stoics emphasize the importance of teaching others to help themselves by offering support in ways that promote their growth and self-sufficiency. But when we step in too often, especially with individuals who are unwilling to change, we can inadvertently make them less accountable for their actions. This, in turn, reinforces toxic behavior, as they begin to expect help without changing their approach to responsibility. The more we give without setting boundaries, the more we enable the unhealthy patterns of those around us. The act of overgiving without the consideration of the other person's ability or willingness to change not only prevents the person from learning responsibility, but it also depletes us mentally, emotionally, and physically. Over time, we find ourselves drained from the constant giving, and the toxic behavior of others is allowed to persist without consequence. The Stoic approach to relationships teaches that kindness must be tempered with wisdom, which means knowing when to step back and let others face the consequences of their actions. When we fail to set limits or to encourage self-reliance, we are both harming ourselves and enabling others to perpetuate negative behaviors. A Stoic would argue that true kindness isn't about always being there to fix things, but about offering support in ways that empower others to grow, take ownership, and develop resilience. By doing so, we ensure that our actions are aligned with virtue, strengthening our own emotional well-being and fostering a healthier dynamic in the relationships we nurture. It is through self-discipline and the setting of clear boundaries that we avoid becoming enablers of toxic behavior, instead fostering environments where growth, responsibility, and mutual respect can flourish. 10. You could lose your sense of identity. From a Stoic perspective, the risk of losing one's sense of identity is a real and pressing concern, especially when an individual sacrifices their own needs for the sake of others. Stoicism teaches that a clear understanding of one's personal purpose and an unwavering commitment to one's virtues are crucial for a stable and meaningful life. When we continuously place the needs, wants, and expectations of others above our own, we slowly begin to erode the very foundation of who we are. The Stoic path emphasizes the importance of self-awareness, the ability to reflect on one's own desires, emotions, and values. Without this, we risk becoming trapped in a cycle of people-pleasing or constant giving, losing sight of our own goals and sense of direction. Over time, we may find ourselves performing roles that are dictated by the demands of others, while our own aspirations and dreams fade into the background. In such a state, our identities become defined by the external influences and expectations of others, not by our own internal compass. This process of self-neglect, of overgiving without consideration for our own needs, leads to a gradual disconnect from our authentic selves. We may start to feel like mere vessels for the needs of others, rather than individuals with our own desires, values, and purposes. The Stoics would argue that this is a form of internal imbalance, one that can leave us feeling hollow, unfulfilled, and disoriented. Without a strong sense of self, we become more vulnerable to the influence of others, losing our ability to act according to our true nature. The Stoic belief in living in accordance with reason requires that we carefully balance our care for others with a steadfast commitment to our own personal growth and self-care. It is only by maintaining this equilibrium that we can preserve our sense of identity and avoid becoming consumed by external demands. When we lose touch with our own goals, values, and principles, we risk not only the loss of our sense of self, but also the inability to offer meaningful help to others. The Stoic approach teaches us that in order to help the world around us, we must first be grounded in our own truth, ensuring that our actions reflect both our virtues and our unique sense of purpose. By honoring our personal needs and aspirations, we can ensure that our kindness and contributions to others are aligned with our true identity and not just the expectations placed upon us. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this content and engage with the ideas shared. Your interest in exploring the concept of kindness and its potential impact on our lives is a crucial step in the pursuit of self-awareness and personal growth. By reflecting on these insights, we are reminded of the importance of balancing our compassion for others with a mindful commitment to our own well-being. I truly appreciate your willingness to reflect on how we can navigate our interactions and relationships more effectively while staying true to our own needs and values. It's through thoughtful consideration of these principles that we can live more intentional, fulfilling lives. I'm grateful for your attention, and I hope these ideas inspire you to maintain a healthy, balanced approach to kindness, setting boundaries that foster both your growth and the well-being of those around you.